Okay.
Right. It's being recorded. Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to jump right in. And Sunanda, it's just lovely to have you here and to be able to talk about your film, because as we were just saying, we had a South Asia exposium on the Indian documentary at NYU in Tisch. I think, what was it now? 8 years ago, 7 years ago, your film was just out, I think, right?
Yeah, I think 2014.
14 or 6 years ago, yeah.
Years
and
ago.
we invited Sunanda to New York, and I was the one who actually chose her film because I liked it so much. And so I'm really happy to be able to talk to you, about the work.
Yeah.
I mean, I think your film, as I've said to you in person many times, is quietly meditative and deeply reflective on so many important issues: ecology, the environment, development and its pitfalls, climate change, deforestation, depletion, changing livelihoods, displacement, right? These very, very important issues that we are facing globally, and of course, particularly in India. But what I find so remarkable about your film, and I think that's why it spoke to me when in the middle of so many films on these interesting, important issues, is its tone. Your tone is very quiet and very open-minded and very exploratory. So to put it in concrete terms, it's like unlike many other very important films also that have this very urgent kind of agenda-driven push, you sort of have these characters to whom you listen very, very deeply, and you let them show you the way. So this was what I felt about your film, that it's got this kind of meandering quality, and we don't quite know where it will take us next. But we'll meet somebody to whom you will listen deeply and watch carefully, and this person will take us down a different path. So that's how, I felt about your film, and I, as a viewer, was taken in that path, and I really deeply appreciated that, because ultimately the film showed us so many, interesting things, including it went deep into farmer suicides, but it did so in a very quiet, reflective manner in which the people themselves are discussing, and it's not like a crisis they're presenting to you, because you don't present yourself with having this agenda. So they're not crisis presenting, they are discussing these crises in their lives in their own gentle ways, because it's an everyday issue for them. So that is what I feel is the real strength of your film, and I'd love to talk to you more about how you achieved that and your structure. But before we go deeply in that direction, I'd love to ask you how you came upon this idea to make a film in Wayanad specifically, because the film can be made in any part of India, right, where there's deforestation and agrarian living. So why Wayanad? What was the seed that took you there? Was it a person you met? Was it something you read? If you could talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Sainath really was my inspiration, and Sainath's articles. Around that time, he was writing extensively for The Hindu and writing about agricultural crisis, and his writing was very interesting. And there was one particular article, which I could really visualize, because it was this article of this lady, an Adivasi lady who travels from Wayanad, Kutta, she goes across the border to Kurk. I forget the name of the article, but that was very visual, and very visually I could see the problems that they were facing, and what ginger cultivation was posing and things like that. So with that I started actually researching a lot more about it, and read through all his articles, and I said I must visit Wayanad. And so that was my main motivation, to kind of check and to really understand, because what Sainath wrote in his articles was quite scary. You know, the kind of, again, he covered farmer suicides and he explained the reason for this. And I thought, let me just go there and explore what is happening and see if there's a possibility for a film. So it is like, you know, I mean, it is like going there, and where do you begin? You know, I mean, Wayanad is a small place, but I mean, it's still, you know, there are many small towns and villages. And how do you start? So you know, you start one at a time. I had some friends there who run a school, so they kind of put me in touch. And uh, yeah, and you know, I mean, I think, I mean, that also relates. I mean, what I'm going to say now will also relate to what you said about the film, and you know, about it being exploratory, and about it, you know, waiting for the characters to speak. So initially, I did a lot of research on ginger cultivation, and as I started speaking to people, I realized, and farmer suicides, and I realized that the people who were committing suicide were actually also people who had some amount of land, land, because they had mortgaged their land, and you know, and had to pay back, and they were suffering as a result. But the ones who were quietly suffering and who didn't get much coverage in the media were the landless laborers. And the Adivasis are quite a large component in that, you know, and especially with ginger cultivation, because I was focusing on ginger cultivation because there's a certain skill that is required in ginger cultivation. So, you know, they had finished. So the ginger cultivation is very intensive, and once you you know, and a lot, they use a lot of pesticides in it. So, you know, it kind of you have to move. Once you finish one crop, then you have to kind of move or leave it fallow for some time before you can crop again. So they used to take these Adivasis in buses across the border to Karnataka, where the land is more flat, and you know, there are vast stretches. Wayanad is very hilly to farm. Uh, but as I started, you know, researching, and when I research, actually, I just spend time. I don't go with the camera. I don't even take stills, actually. I just go. I sometimes record on my phone. I had to, actually. I recorded on my phone because I don't speak the language, so you know, I had to come back and get it translated and all that. Uh, but I realized that a lot of the stories I was getting out of these Adivasis who were working in ginger farms was of exploitation and abuse. You know, physical abuse, you know, sexual exploitation, everything. And you know, I mean, I continued my research, but you know, I was not happy with the, you know, I felt somewhere I was kind of representing them the same way that mainstream media represents them, you know. And parallelly, while I was researching, I had also met these characters who I found very interesting, like this lady in the forest, Jochi, you know. And what interested me about her is that she was so open, and she was so willing to share what she knew, you know, and there's a certain kind of ease with which she shared her stuff. And a certain kind of, again, openness. You know, it's not something. It's not like a bookish knowledge where you kind of say it comes with when you eat and when you walk and when you do various things. You know, little bits of thing here, there, and so somewhere, you know, I had these two things going, and I think, you know, started really looking closely at what is this film that I want to make. You know, do I want to make a film that represents them in such poor light? And parallelly, right from the early stages, a friend had told me about the story of Achan and Iti, the myth, you know. And I mean, I was completely taken up by it because, uh, again, it is very visual. You know, I could see things when it was described to me, and it's also a journey myth. You know, it's the journey of these people, and so there were so many. See, I spent 5 years researching, so you know, things, there were so many parallels. I mean, I can see these things now. Of course, then it was just a constant struggle and saying, how do I really continue, or should I actually stop? And you know, is there a film there? But or during my research, I used to travel by bus. I mean, bus was the only mode of transport, and I couldn't afford anything else. And these bus journeys were fascinating. You begin in the valley, with these rice fields, lush rice fields, and then you go through slopes, go up the slopes, and you have these plantations of pepper, rubber, and ginger. And then you could even cross a forest and then come to the town where you get down. So I was like, and the bus is, for me, being inside the bus and seeing the images outside was a fascinating experience, because in a way, like, the bus inside felt like a microcosm of India, with different kinds of people coming and going, the music, the colors. And then sometimes you nod off, you sleep in the afternoon, after lunch. And it was just so happening. And I said, oh my God, this is actually, the film is this. It's not about trying to convey an issue, or it's a journey. And within the journeys you have these textures, and you get these layers, and you see something, so I mean, the bus also became a metaphor, because you see things close, which is within the bus. Then you see the things in the distance, but through the glass of the bus. So the images are kind of diffused, and then the rain comes, and so it was like drama happening. So then I said that this is actually what it is. And so then I took these three different landscapes which I experienced, and I said, let me make a film using stories that represent these landscapes. And then I said, like, a rice farmer, that lady in the forest was with me from the beginning, and I knew she would be there in the film, and then the ginger country. So that's how actually, so the myths and the travel really helped open up my, view of things. And
so this is interesting, Sunanda, because I thought the wonderful structure that the film has, it comes from this myth, the story of the bird, right? The Achan and Iti myth.
Yeah.
And so who is the person who's singing the song? What's his name?
He's MP Kalan Moopan.
So the fact that you follow him, the crew follows him, and we are following you, and he is taking us down the path that Achan and Iti walked.
Yeah.
Right. And when you think about it, I mean, these are the original. It's an alternative myth of creation coming from the tribal perspective. They are Adam and Eve, right?
Yeah.
So they are following the steps of these mythical ancestors who are taking us through all these different areas, and then we happen to discover what happens in these areas.
Yeah.
And we are told this is where Achan and Iti stopped. This is what they did. Yeah. So I thought that was, of course, how you structure your film, and it gets that kind of meandering, open-ended quality, which is both rooted to the soil, and at the same time mythological and related to their cosmogony.
Yes.
So it's very, very interesting. But now what you're saying also is that you saw these landscapes from the bus.
Yeah.
And you were inside looking outside, and you saw all these landscapes. So did you actually choose where Athan and Vithi walked in some sense?
No,
you didn't. Okay. So
we just stuck to what was there. See, of course, it's an oral myth. I mean, an oral tradition. So there's so many different versions of the myth.
Okay.
And the paths that they walked, and the way it is said itself or sung is very different. But really, the structure for the film came. It did come from the myth, because the myth is a story of, it's a journey from life to death, from birth to death. So in the myth, actually, I mean, I was not so bothered about how clearly the story gets told or represented. That didn't really concern me. For me, it was the journey that I needed to bring about, because also the myth comes in because I feel that landscape is not something, or ecology or environment or so many things that that the film tries to engage with. is not something that is only in the moment. It always, one has to look at the past and the history, and understand it only, understand it from that context. And so since it was a journey from life to death, we had also decided that, let us, while we are filming, let us follow the paddy cycle. See, because when you follow the paddy cycle, you start with images of wet, moist earth, the nurturing, the mushroom growing, all that. And then you go through, drier things, then you experience the difficulties. And then finally it is harvest or death, or, the final stages. So following that cycle of paddy, the kind of imagery we managed to get because of that. And of course, I had a fantastic team. I mean, Somu and the rest, Chris and Tanushree, were absolutely marvelous, and Beena, who came in later. So following that structure also. So you know how it is, Nilita. I mean, a film, there are no clear, I mean, especially when you're working on a film for a very long time, there are so many elements that come in, and in hindsight it's very difficult to say what exactly shaped what, but actually one adds to the other, to the other. So basically what I like to do is gathering these layers, and I don't worry about, is it too much, is it too complex. Actually my films always have too many things happening actually, but it's difficult for me to make something which is very simple. But that's fine, because then you can drop, later you can drop some, you can keep some. So I like to work with these different layers, look at history. I do a lot of research on both oral and written history, and here I spent 2 years researching the myth, finding out about the different versions. And because of that, again, I did many journeys, walking, lots of walking. So
That's what they say about the best kinds of films, is that you do a lot of research, but your research doesn't ever show itself in the film as erudition, right?
Yeah.
That's all within you. But you've mulled enough with it, mulled enough that what you produce is the result of all that research, but it has its own life.
Yeah.
I see. I mean, for me, I think this myth was just a really a wonderful addition, and also at the visual level, you see. Now I didn't understand there was a myth. You had cycled it around paddy as well, but now that you point it out, that's very interesting, because what I did feel is, when you see this, this man walking and walking and walking and singing and showing you the stream and showing you that this is where they sat, this is what they did, you feel, you realize how completely grounded he is to the land and to his forefathers. So later on in the film, when at one point he says that my children are not interested in doing this, they are not going to do it, but I have to do it for the sake of my ancestors.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that is such an amazing thing to say, that you have to keep tilling the land for the sake of these mythological ancestors. You realize how deeply grounded somebody is in the land, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of thing can't come across if you were just interviewing someone. It just would not come across. It's come across because of the way you've collected these myths and these stories, and you're actually walking with him.
Yeah. And it's very interesting, because even the characters, I never told them what the film was about. They didn't even know that there will be, that there are other characters and all that. But we just land up and start filming and just generally chat. And it's fascinating, because along the way, they completely understand what you want. I mean, like we always say that they are performers, really. They perform when the camera comes on. And they all really performed for the camera, and they would almost give us what we wanted, like statements like, one must know the soil, and the soil must, you must know the soil, and the soil must know you, kind of thing. Those kind of things, when they happened, we were like quite shocked. Wow, amazing, but of course, he's also that kind of person. And so it's a very, I mean, there were many things that happened while we were filming, which we were surprised by. it's almost like things falling into place. See, the last scene, the whole, that burial where somebody is being put into the earth, you know, that we just chanced upon. And, we were keen to show some kind of death. And we landed up in this Adivasi settlement, and an old person had died. But we didn't want to film that. They had the body and there were people sitting around, and we didn't want to film that. It looked, it's very strange, and people grieving. So then somebody told us that they were digging the grave. And we all got excited and said, let's film that, and that moment for me, I actually cried when it happened, because finally you're going back to the soil, and in the myth, uh, the the story of the myth is also so fascinating, because uh, the gods, create humans from mud, from clay. And so finally they're made from clay, and then you go back to that. So somewhere I said, oh my god, it's like on its own, it's kind of completing the cycle. Wow, amazing. I was just completely shocked to see this happen. And this, we were just this was not planned in our schedule at all, and it wasn't with any of the characters either. So I suppose
That scene in the film, the point at which it comes in this in the film, you immediately connected with farmer suicides.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's how we. Yeah,
you
we
intentionally
kind of.
that way.
Yeah,
So that is sort of also, well, it worked for me, because you don't talk about farmer suicides in any grand way. I think from what you're saying is that people never knew what you were making your film about, and you were just chatting. And that was the other thing, you're in that tea shop. This is towards the end of the film.
Yeah.
You're in a tea shop, and suddenly everybody in the tea shop starts talking about farmer suicides. And it happens so organically in some sense. It's just part of everyday conversation. And people are actually smiling while they're talking about it, because it is a part of life, and they know this is there, and they're laughing about it and saying they're going to carry on regardless, and who knows what. So, again, that sense that you would never get in a different kind of film, where if you were out there trying to make a film about farmer suicides, what you would get from them is those kind of anguished presentations of that subject, right? But in your film, it's like they're drinking chai and eating appam or whatever, and then they're discussing this, that, and the other, and suicides, and then in a very quiet way, you see that burial. So of course we connect that it's yet another farm.
It is, it's meant to, because that's how the form works, no? You can't really show a farmer, dying, and that kind of, but it's the way you put your images together. But it was a very difficult edit. And
the edit is very finely, it's beautifully shot, the sound is great, and the editing is, this time seeing the film again, very well edited. A lot of thought went into the structure.
So, that also, the getting in the actually, strange, it's not strange, but the myth was the most difficult part of making the film. Right from the early stages, there were many times I thought, should I just drop the myth? It's becoming impossible to handle. How do you represent it? How do you, I don't want any kind of the usual representation. And then again, the dangers of how, one can romanticize a mythical story, and, so how do you make it real? How do you bring it down to the, to the ordinary kind of level? And it is very, very challenging. But I suppose, again, like when you do your research, like with the person who walks and talks about the myth, when I was doing my research, I used to do a lot of walks with him. I would, like, because he said he lives up the hill, so you get down from the bus in the valley, and then you have to walk up to his house. And again, beautiful landscapes, and then just opposite his house there's a tea shop, and then if he doesn't have tea, and then you go to the tea shop and sit and chat for hours, and then he comes and he drops you back to the bus stop, you know, and I had somebody with me always to translate and help. So these walks were fabulous, you know, because there's something else when you're walking and chatting. The conversations you have, it's very different from when you're face to face somehow, you know, because the conversation does not continue. It's not one very streamlined kind of chatting, you know. You meander, then you see somebody, you stop, you say how are you, then he tells you about that guy, and so many different things come in. And I had similar conversations with many people during my research. Even the people who assisted me, uh, we would go on long walks because we had to travel that way, move, and the kind of stuff that you get to understand, you see, the kind of things they talk about, the landscape. So I think all these things added, you know, uh, to what you see finally in the film. I mean, thankfully, it all came together. The problem is when they don't come, when it doesn't come together, and you know, yeah, it just falls apart. But yeah,
I think, you said earlier that when you were researching, you didn't even take any photographs.
yeah,
I mean, that is pretty astonishing because, I mean, and the kind of research you did. So if you already were walking so much, say, with this person,
yeah.
and you visited many of the sites, you must have been kicking yourself for not, shooting then or later on. Obviously, there were things you could not possibly replicate that he must have said the
Yeah,
first time when he said something to you, right? It will never get quite repeated again in the
yeah.
same way.
But you
So,
always get the same thing in another way, you know. I mean, it's because I don't like to make a film with material that I collect during research. I like to I mean, for the first thing is, I mean, initially, later I did take photographs and things like that, but initially, because you know, you want to, how do you enter people's homes and chat with them? You can't come there with an agenda, you know. So initially, just say we are wandering around, yeah, chatting. Then you say, okay, and I'm doing some research and all that, and you chat about many things, and so it, you have to keep it open ended, and yeah. So I really like to do my research separately and then do the filming and plan it, and you know, go with a crew, a small, very tiny crew, and actually film. By then, the people who are in the film are also very comfortable with you, and know that you have no other agenda. You know, they are that. That seems to work for me.
I'm sure this
So
is very interesting for the journalism students because this is just the kind of approach they never can adopt, right? You guys? I mean, they always have to have an agenda. They're always in there asking a question before they've even looked or related to someone. So I think a lot of my teaching documentary to them is really about completely deep-pinning themselves from whatever they're used to.
yeah, but there
Just
is
sharing this kind of approach, which is a
yeah,
completely different approach, right? That you
yeah.
go into a place without an agenda and you're just having a conversation and you're
I
open.
mean, you have an agenda in the sense you
I mean,
have
of
something
course
in
you
mind,
do, yes.
but
Everyone
yeah.
does, yeah,
But
but
but there is a journalist who does it very well, Rohini Mohan, and her articles. Rohini Mohan, have you all? I think she studied in Chennai, from the Chennai school. Amazing, Nilita. You should read her work. And
I
she's
will.
written about, she's got an award for her coverage on Assam and the CAA and NPR and all that. But she brings in a lot of these human interest stories. Small bits into the thing. And this is and she's written a book called Seasons of Trouble on Sri Lanka. Beautiful. I
Mhm.
couldn't sleep the night I read it. The day I had to stay up the night and finish it. It's a beautiful, very well written. There again, she goes and she meets these characters, and she engages with them over a long period of time. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of writers, the journalists who do these interesting profiling of people, and they give you textures of something more than just the issue. You
Yeah.
know.
No, I meant in when they do film work, they're under such,
Okay.
I meant journalists when they have to do
Make
work for television.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
headlines they're under, right? But hopefully everybody will find a way where they can work, because you see what happens when you work in this way. It's completely a different thing. Yeah. No, so then tell me something else now. So of course the myth is a wonderful device, and you've structured your film through it. I was somewhat puzzled, and I still am, and so I'd love to ask you. And please, everyone should feel free to ask questions. You know, this is a very interactive session. The title of your film, Who Has Seen the Arana?
yeah,
Right? And of course, we do see the arana in your film, this little creature. That one had me, I mean, I was just questioning it, because the arana, if I understood correctly, is also a dangerous thing. It's not something you really want to see. And so is it for you like a metaphor for something else? How did you come up with that title, and what does the arana mean to you in particular?
yeah. So arana is actually like a skink. It's a garden lizard, and there's a myth. And Jo Chechi, at the end of the film, she says, when the arana bites you, you don't know who dies, whether the arana dies or the human dies. You know, so it's that. And actually, the arana is there in the myth. The lady, the goddess, you know, who goes about destroying and killing people, the Achananiti, who's about to kill them, she is turned into the arana. So for me, you know, for us, while we were making the film and filming, the whole thing was, how does one bring in the myth into present day with, you know, how do you intertwine the myth with the present day narratives, you know, what do you do? And how do you get it into the film? So I would, you know, constantly like wake up in the morning before heading out, we'd have a chai and then go, and I'd keep thinking about the myth and, you know, is there any way we can bring it into the film? So casually one day we asked this guy, have you seen the arana? And he started looking for it, you know, and then we kept asking many people. And then there's a poet in the bus stand. We met him, and he says, have you seen? And then that's the beginning of the film, he draws the arana, you know. So we got some very surprising responses. And actually for me, when I started reading about it, the arana is actually its natural habitat is among dry leaves. So and it hides and moves around in those dry leaves. So with development, and when there's a lot of construction, and if if there's concrete all over, then the natural habitat of the arana goes. So the arana is actually finally a metaphor for things which are going and disappearing. And so, you know, have you seen the arana is a question to all of us, saying, have you noticed, you know, the arana around you? Or have you seen, you know, so in many ways it represents the myth. It is a thing, and it's a title which is where you don't know what is happening. Again, you know, it arouses some kind of curiosity. It's not something that tells you what the film is going to be about. So yeah,
a typical example of what makes your film so discursive, you know, the title itself. And then when that the person does say that if an arana bites, either you die or the arana dies, and then we
don't know who dies.
You makes you wonder, like, somebody dies, right? Like there has to be a loss, something has to give. So in every scene, I mean, if like this man who worked in the Middle East and made his small fortune for his family, George, right? His name is
George.
So he comes and puts all those savings into ginger cultivation, and they lose everything, or they're losing everything. And that also, it is, again, that is presented without despair. I mean, the wife, such a lovely character. She's so calm, and she's smiling, and you know, the way she talks to you, it's like, yes, we are going through this problem, but you know, so there is that sense of gentleness and that kind of sense of really acceptance, and not resignation though, right? It's not resignation, it's a kind of acceptance, and So there also, then the idea of the arana was staying with me, that something is gained, something is lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
We live
There
in a
is a
time
loss.
where, yes,
Mm.
so it's very interesting that you have this title that is so open-ended, that it allows you
Yeah.
to think. It's yet another thinking point for your film as you're watching.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Does anyone have questions? I don't want to dominate this.
I do.
Yeah.
Can
Okay.
everyone hear my voice?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was wondering, like you would have traveled for a long time, right? So
Hmm.
how did you decide? And you would have met a lot of people. So how did you decide who not to keep in the film? Like how did you like
That's
how did you
always
make
a,
that choice?
yeah. No, that's always a challenge. And who not to keep, what not to include is the most difficult thing to do. But, because I had decided that I want to represent these three kinds of landscapes of the rice fields, plantation, and forest, uh, because I felt that it represents a diversity, and it also represents coexistence, which I felt when I was going in a bus, where different kinds of people come together and live together, work together, journey through life. So, so somewhere I felt that the film has to be this thing. So I had already decided on these three separate the context, the landscape. So I picked out three characters, and I decided to focus only on them. And then of course there were these, the Mupan who spoke the myth. I mean, that that was additional, but the myth, the characters who represented the myth. But yeah, so that helped a lot, and having that kind of clarity. I suppose it also was because I had done my research. I don't film during research. So then when I go, I just film certain things that I need. Um, so
So
yeah, I mean,
this landscape thing came up during your research or
yeah, but much later in my, much later, I think after 4 years or something.
So,
Uh,
Sunanda, we haven't talked about Jochi at all, actually,
yeah.
yet. Will you tell us how you met her? And
Actually, she's quite an activist, Ruchi, so she's heavily against, I mean, she's vehemently against tourism and what it has done to their place. And so very early on, one of the persons, Arun, who was helping me research the film, is also quite an environmentalist and belongs to an environmental organization, their small one, that they run a lot with friends. And he took me to meet her, very early on. And she really changed my perspective of things. And, so we spent a lot of time, a very lovely place. And it's in the Tirunelli, right on top of the hill. And so, her view, her worldview was very interesting. And yeah, she was there right from the beginning. The other people I met much later, like the farmer, I met towards the end when I said, okay, I want to make, and I need a rice farmer. And then we go to meet him. And first of all, I see his house and I said, wow, will look really good on film. Sorry to say that, but the location is great for a film. But when he started talking, I said, oh my God. I said, yeah, okay, don't say too much. I want it on film. So, and George came much later. And George was very difficult because he would not open up and he would not say the things. That's why we were not getting things from him at all. We tried, and we traveled with him to Karnataka, and we tried all kinds of things. And then finally we said, let's go and meet his wife, and maybe she will give us it. And that's how it kind of happened. uh, so I mean, right through the film, I was also like with the rice farmer, Raman. He I was very conscious because he speaks very well and he's, in control of the situation. And I was, wondering whether, the female voice was required there. And I did try speaking to his wife and, trying to get her views. And I realized that actually, his feminine side is so strong, his things of nurturing and caring and, so I'll just play that scene, that mushroom scene. Shall I
Yes.
share that? I'll try. Because his ability to nurture and care not only for his land but for his grandchildren is so tender, and is so. And I think and I felt that this is fine. I mean, Jo Chechi she was a strong female character, but the feminine side of him was also very, very drew me to him, and I said it's okay. He's not a dominating male personality in that sense. So these were also things that I look at. I mean, just at the back of my mind to try and balance. So again, even with George, I was very conscious that I had to get his wife in and get that perspective. So yeah. So let me just try sharing it. Okay. Sorry, give me a moment. Can you? No?
All good, all good.
ഇതെനിക്ക് എല്ലാ വർഷവും ഉണ്ടാവും. എന്തോ അങ്ങനെ ഒരു ഭാഗ്യം നമുക്കുണ്ട്. അല്ല, ഒന്നുമല്ല, അത് പ്രകൃതി തനിയെ വരുന്നതാണ്. പിന്നെ ഈ സാധനം നമ്മൾ തുടരെ ഉപദ്രവിക്കരുത്. ഉപദ്രവിച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ പിന്നെ അവിടെ ഉണ്ടാവില്ല.
നമ്മളിപ്പോ തൊട്ടത് പ്രശ്നമാകും.
അല്ല, എല്ലാവർക്കും ഉണ്ടാവില്ല, ഉണ്ടാവാൻ വഴിയില്ല. ഇതിൽ ഈ സാധനം ഉണ്ടാവുന്ന ചെതലിൽ നിന്നാണ്. നമ്മൾ ചെതലുണ്ടല്ലോ, അതൊരു പ്രത്യേക തരം ചെതല. അല്ലാണ്ട് സാധാരണ ചെതലല്ല. ഇതിനൊരു പ്രത്യേക ചെതലാണ്. അവരാണ് ഇത് ഉൽപ്പാദിപ്പിക്കുന്നത്. തക്കുടേ, 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 നീ വാ. മെല്ലെ പറിക്ക്. പറിക്ക്. അതന്നെ, അമ്മനെ കൊടുക്ക്, അമ്മനെ കൊടുക്ക്. അത് മെല്ലെ അടിക്കൂടി പറിക്ക്. അടിക്കൂടി പൊട്ടിക്കാണ്ട് പറിക്ക്. പൊട്ടിപ്പോവില്ലേ? അതന്നെ. അതെടുക്കണ്ട. അതുണ്ടല്ലോ, അത് ഇനി വളരട്ടെ. നമുക്ക് നാളെയും വേണ്ടേ? ഒരു ദിവസം തിന്നാൽ മതിയോ? നമുക്ക് 2-3 ദിവസം കറി വെക്കണ്ടേ? ഒറ്റ ദിവസം കറി വെച്ചിരുന്ന കാര്യം നടക്കും മോനെ. അതെ, ചവിട്ടി പോരുത് കേട്ടോ. കുട്ടികൾ വരുമ്പോൾ നോക്കണോ, അതൊന്ന് ചവിട്ടിരുന്ന് പറയണം കേട്ടോ. തക്കൂടെ ഞാൻ കിട്ടടി. ശരി ശരില്ലടാ. അമ്മ തക്കുണ്ട ബാഗ് ഒന്നും കൊണ്ടെടുത്തോളി. ഇത് പിന്നെ എഴുതുന്നത് ഈ വിത്തിൻ്റെ ഞാൻ പേരെഴുതി സാധാരണ പേരെഴുതി ആ വയലിൽ കുത്താറ്. അപ്പം ഞാൻ വിത്തിൻ്റെ നമ്പർ മാത്രമേ എഴുതുള്ളൂ. അപ്പോൾ ആ നമ്പർ അടിസ്ഥാനത്തിൽ ഞാൻ ഈ വിത്ത് വെള്ളത്തിലിടുന്നത്. നീ പഠിച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞോ? അച്ഛനെവിടെ പോയി? ഇത്രയും വിത്തുകളാണ് എനിക്കല്ലേ ആർക്കാരും അത് തുള്ളി ഇപ്പം തരാം. ഞാൻ ഇതൊന്ന് വളർത്തിപ്പോ. ഇതുകൊണ്ട് കഴിഞ്ഞ പ്രാവശ്യം ഈ കാലാവസ്ഥ ശരിയായില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഈ വിത്ത് മുഴുവനും ഇതുണ്ടോ മുഴുവൻ പതിരാ ഇതുണ്ടോ. ഇപ്പം എല്ലാം റെഡിമെയ്ഡ് കിട്ടുന്നതാണല്ലോ. ഭക്ഷണം അടക്കം റെഡിമെയ്ഡ് കിട്ടുമ്പോൾ വിത്തും കിട്ടാൻ തുടങ്ങി റെഡിമെയ്ഡ്. നമ്മൾ ഈ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു കാര്യം ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു കൃത്യതയും നമ്മളെ മനസ്സിന് ഇണങ്ങിയും ചെയ്താൽ എന്ത് കാര്യവും നടക്കും. പക്ഷെ നമ്മളങ്ങനെ ആരും ചിന്തിക്കാറില്ല. എല്ലാം ഓട്ടോമാറ്റിക്കായിട്ട് വരട്ടെ എന്ന് കണക്കൂട്ടി നിൽക്കുക. അമ്പാടി 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 ഇവിടെ ഇരിക്കണം. ഞങ്ങൾ കണ്ടത്തിൽ പോട്ടെ. അമ്പാടി വരുന്നുണ്ടോ? എന്തിന്? കണ്ടത്തിലോ? നീ പിന്നെ ഞാറ് പറിക്കുവോ? പറിക്കോ? അത് കൈക്കോട്ടുണ്ട് കൊത്തുവോ? കൊത്തു? എൻ്റെ പോലെ ആവില്ല അമ്പാടി, ആവില്ലെന്ന്.
Yeah, I love that mushroom scene. Um, it's, again, I mean, it's so telling when he tells the child, you don't pick everything. Do you want to eat it all now? You have to, I mean, it's such an important message about not depleting the soil. You have to value the soil and allow it to feed you. So it's just lovely that these things are coming from a character in your film rather than from your mouth,
Yeah.
So
actually, I think, I mean, he was performing. He performs to some extent for the camera all the time. But the thing is that he is like this in life.
Yes.
These things come naturally when he walks with his grandchildren, telling them things. And he's a natural teacher, So he knew what he had sussed out, figured out what we wanted. And he was kind of, giving it to us in bits and pieces. It's just wonderful, and
completely authentic way. It's completely authentic because the mushroom is very small and it shouldn't be plucked now. They should wait until it's bigger and then there'll be more to feed, right? So it's not in any sense dishonest.
No.
He is giving it to you, but in a completely genuine way. He's also giving the lesson to his grandson, and he's saying it in a way that it's important for the film. So that kind of awareness is very interesting, that the camera allows that kind of awareness to be created for the characters in a film, if there is this kind of interesting relationship with the filmmaker. Where I think clearly, Sunanda, I mean, I think they feed off you and the crew because, again, the sense of calmness, especially in scenes where you would expect a lot of stridency and stress. I think you probably resonate calm and... Sorry, Bixby keeps talking to me in the middle. Obviously you sort of give out this kind of composure and calmness, and you're in no hurry, and that's why people respond to you in that way. Am I correct?
I get very anxious at times, but I don't. But I mean, I think very early on I realized that. One is I am slow. it takes a long time for me to actually arrive at things and figure out what I want to do, and I'm extremely slow. And I decided I've accepted that, and I said, let me go with that. And in a way, that slowness helps. But yeah, I'm also a little conscious of my relationship with the characters, and expecting them to perform for the camera, and what. So I also feel a little bad about these things, I'm actually going to their homes with the camera. I feel a little sometimes awkward, so those things. So then I spend more time, that kind of thing. So it's a combination of things, but it's probably the characters themselves who are so wonderful and relaxed, and but on the other note is, finally, okay, one may be calm and relaxed and think, but one is also trying to make a film, and you're trying to put together a structure. You're always thinking of that, that's the actual tension, because you may have wonderful images, but how do they tie together? How do they become film? So I'd like to give you an example, is like with Jochi. I call her Jochi, Chi, which is sister in Malayalam. That's how she's referred everywhere. So we have got wonderful footage with her in the forest and tending to things, and all very positive, and kind of in a way glorifying her. And I said, we were discussing it. I was discussing with Somu and the others, and said that we need something else. Otherwise, she's too nice. We need some other dimension. It's not that she's too nice, but we need another dimension of her life. And it so happened that day we were hanging out in a house and wondering what to film, and she made tea for. We were chatting with her and all that, and the whole time she was talking to the person who was assisting me, in Malayalam, and she seemed quite hassled and bothered, and I was just listening to the conversation and realized it's about her daughter. And she went on and she's telling him what's happened and all that. Then I asked Siddhi, what is it? What is she really telling you? And she told me that, they are, they don't meet, and she doesn't let her grandchildren meet her, and because of this whole tourism thing, that the daughter works in a resort. So I said, we have to get this on film. How do we get it? So then, so we decided, we used to hang out in the veranda, which is like an open space which overlooks like a lot of greenery. And her kitchen is a very tiny, pokey space, but it's a very, it's like a cave, it's like a womb. And we said, let's film there, and maybe we can ask her something, and let's see what she says. And when we went there with the camera, and we just sat there and we said, Chechi, can you make us tea? And she said, yeah, and she was making tea and all that. And then we sat there sometime for a long time, and then Sibi asked, how are things? Things are not so good, no, Chechi, or something. And then she starts, talking about the thing, and she weeps. And for me, I was also very grateful that there was so much darkness around, for her to actually be in this moment, where things are not working for her. But having that scene made a huge difference. Shall I just play that scene?
Mm-hmm.
ചേച്ചീൻ്റെ പേര് ചന്ദ്രിക. 3 പിള്ളേരുണ്ട്. ഒരു പെണ്ണും 2 ആൺകുട്ടികൾ. അവരെല്ലാവരും സ്കൂളിൽ പോകുന്നതാണ്. ഇവർ രാവിലെ വരും, രാവിലെ 8 മണിയാകുമ്പോൾ വരും, പിന്നെ വൈകിട്ട് 6 മണിക്ക് പോകും. അമ്മ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് ഇവരത്തെ അമ്മ അങ്ങനെ ദൂരേക്ക് പോകണ്ടെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞത് ഇതായത് വഴിമാറി അമ്മ തടസ്സം ചെയ്തതിന്. എൻ്റെ കൂടെ അത്ര ലോകമൊന്നുമില്ല, എന്നാലും ഇടയ്ക്ക് വഴിയിലൊക്കെ കാണുമ്പോൾ മാത്രം ഒരു ഇത്, അല്ലാണ്ട് ഇതൊന്നുമില്ല, അധികമൊന്നുമില്ല. അമ്മേനോട് തെറ്റിയ കാരണം ഞാനും മീനാക്കില്ല അധികം.
എനിക്കുള്ള അതല്ലേ ഞാൻ പറയുന്നത്. മക്കളിങ്ങനെ ആയിട്ടില്ല, എന്താവും സ്ഥിതി? അത് ദുഃഖമേ ഉള്ളൂ എനിക്ക്. ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ പിള്ളേരെന്താ വിദ്യാഭ്യാസം കണക്കെല്ലാം കണക്കാണ്. ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ മക്കൾ ഒരു ഭാഗം വിദ്യാഭ്യാസം, ഒരു ഭാഗം നാശം വഴി. എനിക്ക് കല്യാണം കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് മക്കളില്ലാതെ ഞാൻ 5-6 വർഷം ഇങ്ങനെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അപ്പം അന്നേരം ഒരു ദൈവാനുഗ്രഹം കൊണ്ട് എനിക്ക് ആ മോൾ ഉണ്ടായതാണ്. അങ്ങനെ ആ മോളെ പ്രസവിച്ചിട്ട് ഞാൻ ഭൂമിയിലല്ല വളർത്തിയത്, എൻ്റെ മടിയിലാണ്. എൻ്റെ മടിയിൽ വളർത്തിയിട്ട കുട്ടിയാണ്. 1 വയസ്സ് വരെ ഞാൻ ഭൂമിയിൽ വിട്ടിട്ടില്ല. അങ്ങനെ വളർത്തിയെടുത്ത കുട്ടിയാണ്. ഈ 2 മാസം കഴിഞ്ഞ 1 വർഷം ആ ചെറിയ കൊച്ചു പിള്ളേര് അവരെന്നെ കാണുമ്പോൾ ഓടുന്ന വിടില്ല. എൻ്റെ മുഖം നോക്കില്ല കുട്ടികൾ. ആ അവസ്ഥയാ മകളാണ് തരുന്നു. അതാ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു, രാവിലെ കണ്ടു. എന്നെ കണ്ടപാട് മുഖം ഇങ്ങനെ കുനിഞ്ഞ് ഒരു ഷെയ്ഡ് കൂടെ പോയി. കഷ്ടത്തിലാവുമെന്ന് എനിക്ക്. അപ്പൊ അങ്ങനെ മക്കളെ മനസ്സിൽ എത്തിയില്ല. മകള അങ്ങനെയാണ് മകളെ കാര്യം.
Sorry. Yeah. So it's like, what you said in your talk about your film Eyes of Stone, the last scene, no? Where she gets possessed, where you instinctively felt that something was going to happen and you kept the camera rolling. Similar, you need something, that something is very, very important for the film. And you try to get it without, kind of intruding into that space and to the character's privacy, and so yeah. So I mean, so it is a combination of these two things. Things that happen organically, things that you get, but things that you also try to make happen.
So in this case, Sunanda, we get the gist of it, that Jochi is a traditional healer, an environmentalist, wedded to the forest, and her daughter is working for some hotel. And we assume that the rift between them is because of that. They disagree with each other on what's happening in the environment, right? But you don't explore it. At this point, didn't you want to go talk to her daughter? Because here's like a ready-made direction to go into. I mean, a rift within the family over livelihoods, right?
Yeah.
Just to...
we did that shot that is there where the son is standing and she refused to talk to us.
The daughter.
So we did. So we did, and then we said, okay, let it be.
Right.
She's not talking. She's not talking.
Right.
So that's why we try to bring in a little bit the tourism bit, and where we went to that resort and got that thing and all that, because I mean, because what they all said, and even this person Arun, who was working with me on the film, said that it's not about, tourism is not about like just people coming to a place. It's about the capacity that a person a place has to accommodate, the carrying capacity of a place. Beyond a certain number, it becomes unviable. And she also says that, finally we don't benefit from tourism. The benefit of tourism goes to the owners of the resorts and to others. And finally, her point was that, this resort that we filmed is right on the river. So she said, who is going to, the people who give permission for the resort, are they going to stand there and watch and say, okay, is somebody throwing a bottle, or, so these are things that even when there's ecotourism, she alluded to it. She said implementation is so poor in our country. Then how can you have this kind of this kind of tourism happening? And Wayanad is really suffering. I mean, it's a beautiful place, and all that. And the place where she stays is religious, has a temple, so they suffer from a lot of these pilgrims who come here. Uh, uh, so yeah, I mean, I think there were so many things in the film that it was a bit of a struggle, really, to try and bring in aspects like. I remember once when I screened the film at IIT Delhi, and the lot of the Mallu men, the men from Kerala, have a certain way of looking at things, and I mean, I've had horrible experiences in some of the screening in Kerala, and although I get really irritated by these things. So the group of boys who were in the hostel and had come to see the film, sitting at the back, and during the Q&A, they said, but yours is a very romantic film. What about, the Adivasis, and they fought. There's a big movement that happened there called the Muttanga agitation, where they had a leader, and, they fought for the land. And how come you don't have that and all that? So I said, I mean, thankfully, I didn't have to really answer, but I answered later. But there was a professor there, and he said that hers is a quiet film. Hers is it doesn't have to be this strident politics that is in your face all the time. And, the kind of stuff that she's got from the forest and the kind of politics that she's got of the forest is far more interesting than, representing a movement. And then I told them, and this is also something that I wanted to share, is finally the film is about very ordinary people, or at least people who are considered very ordinary or small, not only the people, but even the things in the landscape that we were looking at were all very tiny, We are not looking at elephants and things, but we're looking at all the creepy crawlies, the arana, or the dragonfly, or the caterpillar, or the cats, the kittens, and it is. And I'm always fascinated by these very so-called ordinary people, because when you film their daily lives, you get something very special, from this ordinariness. And I felt that I did try to, I did think of this Muttanga agitation and was thinking of how to bring it in, but I felt that it would take away from these small things that these people are doing, the characters are doing with the land and thing, and I said, let it be things of, just very simple things happening in the film. So, yeah, so there are, it happens to all filmmakers that people have expectations, especially if you're from that place. So there is also, I feel, my view of politics is quite. I don't like the strident, in your face kind of thing. It does work in other films, and I'm happy to watch them. But I like to allude to things. I like things to be in the background. I like to suggest and keep it as open as possible, so that each of us can, make our, form our decisions.
Tina, would you like to?
Yeah,
because
I was
you
just
made a film on pesticides and agriculture, so
No. Actually, it's this whole issue of journalism, and especially as there are so many other students of journalism there, because I myself have been a journalist, a print journalist, for a long time. Okay. And a lot of, and I realized actually that when I came to filmmaking later, after, or at some stage after, when I was in journalism and worked for a long time, that and as a development journalist, which is what I was, and I was a feature writer. There's a certain kind of sensibility that you attain, and a certain kind of way of looking at the world, and therefore it often colors the way you do your filmmaking as well, obviously, because you kind of come from a certain tradition, and and for me, so it's really, and I really like and really liked your film a lot. And but personally, I was just trying to say that, the challenges sometimes of course of time as well, always this, you need to deliver, you have to finish things by a certain time, etc. But also, it's a way of looking at the world. And I've had to challenge myself a lot on that. And so I mean, of course, a lot of that comes from looking at films from other genres as well, which you really do appreciate. But I was just saying that, I mean, especially since we're sitting here with other people who've come from journalism, that and what I've actually done recently is I've been making some poetry films, and I've been editing them myself. And it's like, it's wonderful because it's kind of opened me up. It kind of opened up my sensibility, in a way in which my, other, like that film, it's actually set in the orange orchards in the north of Thailand, so it's a film on pesticide poisoning and what's happening in the north of Thailand. It's near the Burma border, because I lived in Thailand all those for 11 years. And so a lot of, and so to kind of challenge myself, or actually it's only through the process of making something like a very different kind of film altogether, that I've been able to rethink how to work, so it's, as I said, it's so much, it's so much baggage that one often has, depending on, one's discipline or where one's coming from. And as you said, of course, those films have a place, as well. But at the same time, I think it's wonderful to give that time which filmmaking really needs, to actually as much time as is possible. But anyway, so I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the film, and I really appreciate, the sensitivities which come with that time, and which allow you to explore so much, which often, when one comes with these other ways of filmmaking, one doesn't have. So anyway.
Yeah, but it's not a very viable way of making a film, because but that's another
this is the problem, right? Like, if you get a commissioned film to make from the development sector, it has to have a certain look. Fortunately, we're just tied into these things. If you're producing a documentary for television, it's just certain expectations are there. You'll have a third person expository, first of all, explaining everything to you. So these are things, I mean, in the documentary, we have all this incredible leeway, and we can be artists, and we can make films in these very subtle, meaningful ways. But then there's a struggle, right? You spend 5 years making a film, or you have no funding, you have your self-funding, like yesterday Sean McAllister was talking about that. Even after, no matter how many films you make, ultimately it's a complete struggle. So I mean, it's just, I think even having these conversations are useful, because they at least allow some light to come in, from some half open window, about no matter what your particular constraints are in your genre and what you have to do or make, that there is a way of looking at things a little bit differently, which could allow for a different experience and a different exposure for the audience. But Sunanda, coming back to this, how did you fund the film? I mean, this was obviously not a PSBT film. So
self-funded.
Self-funded.
Mostly, I got a little bit from Korea, Busan, but largely self-funded, because I also do commission work. But I was also, fairly inexperienced in those days. Also, it was very different. The market was very different. Now you have, Dockage is a good space for, pitching your film. I was with my new film. I was there in March. That's where I met Sean, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I have a feeling, yeah. So some people are very good at getting funding, and one has to learn how to do that. But yeah, it was largely self-funded, and of course, I have been able to recover some amount through distribution, and sales and things like that. It's not much, but I mean, I'm happy with what is there. But now for the next project, I have to make sure I get some funding at least.
Dipali has a question.
Yeah, so this is more of a comprehensive question, so that is why I was saving it for the end, kind of. I am sure, and this is like it's clearly coming from my journalist mindset. I'm sure Nilita ma'am and even Tia ma'am will have something to offer. So when you decide to make a film, do you give yourself a deadline? Because in this film you said you spent nearly 5 years only in researching, and then you went ahead to make the film. So even not considering my journalist mindset, I mean 5 years I believe is very long, and
It is.
even landscape might change in that duration. So do you give yourself a deadline, and what happens then?
Yeah. No, I don't give myself a deadline, which is very impractical. I mean, for me, my goal is the film. Finally, I want to. And as you start making it, you see certain things, and you see certain things happening. So um, uh, it's a bit. It's completely impractical, you know. But yeah, now I'm hoping to, so with this new film also I spent some time on research, but then I'm not filming right at the end. I've started filming a little bit so that I can put together a trailer and pitch my film. So I'm doing those kind of things and constantly trying to think of ways to get funds, so so that has changed, but it is for who, like at Dockage. Dockage is a workshop where in Calcutta that happens once a year, where they invite participants with films, where you have it's a mentoring workshop where they kind of train you, and train you mean give you a bit of feedback on your film and how you can present it to commissioning editors. But there, I saw many young people who are pitching their film, who had been pitching the same idea for 3 years, so and then they go to different, Dhaka also has one Dhaka lab. So I mean, that again is a challenge, because as Saurav Sarangi once told me, because when you have things like myth and all that, it's become very difficult, So what I do is now I realize, and I don't present that part. I don't include parts which I cannot explain clearly, and so yeah, one lives and one learns from that, and hopefully I'd be better this time, but can never say. When you look at these kind of things, I mean, I don't know how many people would be interested in funding a film like the Arana, because it's not a TV film, and again, like Nilita was saying. So yeah, I mean, that's a big problem. But in terms of time, yeah, definitely, I don't. I actually don't limit myself.
But Dipali, the reason one doesn't limit oneself is because one doesn't have funding, right? One is not commissioned, right? I think we would all be very happy if we had a commission. Yeah. And we had to get a film out in, I mean, not your journalistic deadlines, which are crazy, but if someone said, okay, we need this film in like the next 10 months, I think it's perfectly possible to make a really fine film within 10 months. But you have to have that support, right? You have to know that you're funded, so you can have a proper budget and you can work accordingly. That's the problem we face with now in the documentary world. I mean, the PSPT gives you funds, but they're just minuscule. And the rest of the time, you're just constantly scrambling. And somehow you have to self-fund. Somehow you have to you get it up to a stage, and then somebody, if you're lucky, will buy it off you. Like even McAllister yesterday was saying the same thing, that there is funding from Amazon and Netflix, but the films he wants to make are just not the kinds of films they're interested in.
Yeah.
So you have to end up self-funding, and then if you're self-funding, of course, it'll take forever, right? So it's not a choice, really.
True.
Sadly.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, Vasudha, you have to unmute yourself one second.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah.
About the character, I'm just wondering, maybe I'm overanalyzing or something, but I really feel about the characters, all four of them. I felt that they had a similar kind of external and internal conflict or situation. Like the rice farmer, he was basically trying to conserve the traditional ways of cultivation, and similarly, he was trying to, not exactly teach, but he was always with his grandson, trying to transfer whatever he knows, his knowledge to him. And so is true with Joshi. I mean, she had this fear or this struggle with, the environment and the traditional healing going away, and her daughter actually drifted apart. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there a connection between it, or I'm just overanalyzing? And people had a similar internal and external conflict.
I mean, I think you saw the right. I mean, there is a connection because, again, for things like traditional, I mean, basically, there's not much value, given to these kind of professions, whether it's agriculture or this. So the next generation is losing interest, and next generation is out, like the rice farmers, two sons, one drives an auto rickshaw, one is in the panchayat, So definitely there is that conflict that is happening in their lives of whether what they're doing, whether their ideas can continue, and that's for sure. It's there. And that's a struggle. So in a way, for me, I felt that by bringing in the scenes with the grandsons, it opened up some kind of hope of, that, okay, maybe the grandsons will carry his tradition. Otherwise, it's such a loss, no? It's like the landscape, once it's lost, it's gone, it's gone. You can't regenerate that same thing, so all these, their livelihoods, once it's gone, it's gone. And with this changing landscape, it's going very fast. So.
Also, ma'am, I mean, so you spent some 5 years there, talking to people, chatting. So, I mean, I don't know, as a person, you really develop this connect with it, and we kind of empathize. So, where to draw that line? Because at the end of the day, you're filming picture also. So, is that a problem for you? Because even if I write a simple story, it becomes a big problem for me. Where to draw that line of it?
No, not really, because I mean, you don't want to draw a line, no, because it's not about what you can get out of somebody, your characters. It's about, I mean, what they can give you. It's about what you can. It's a two-way relationship. So there's a lot that I got. I mean, besides their presence in the film, what I learned and my views changed a lot. I mean, or whatever, kind of modified and opened up. My worldview opened up, seeing their worldview, which I mean, I find fascinating. Their interests, and what the way they see the land. I mean, see, it was very physical, their connection with landscape, and then I realized that that the feeling of touching and working with the land is so important. And they say, Jo Chechi says in The Forest that we have to teach the younger generation, so this burden that she carries, that okay, it's going to go with me, is there. And those small things that you see, and the way the rice farmer is with his kids, and all are something which definitely affect you, and kind of make you think about things.
So, Sunanda, we have 5 minutes more.
Okay.
Time has flown by. So, I want to ask you one question, please, that
Yeah.
about the editing, because you've
Yeah.
talked about the research, you've talked a lot about your production with the crew, but
Yeah.
love to know about editing, because obviously this film meandered in different directions, and you had to somehow cull it all together on the editing table. So, could you tell us about your process? How do you work? Do you look at the footage by yourself first? Do you make extensive notes? Do you just give it to an editor for them to have a kind of impartial view? And what forms did the edit take? How did it finally come down to this shape?
Yeah. Yeah. So editing was extremely difficult. Tanushri was the main editor on the job, and so what she did was I was going to, she was in at that time in Bombay, and she kind of put together, but she was also the gaffer on the film. You know, so she was part of the crew and she knew exactly what was happening, and we were discussing a lot there too. But she put together one kind of a 2-hour timeline that you know, that with all the things, and it was beautifully
Paper,
done.
paper timeline or a
No,
film
no,
timeline?
and a film timeline
Oh, okay.
edit. And what was nice is in that was that the scenes, the way they were cut, were beautifully cut, because they, you know, it was like the way fiction is cut, no, with you know, you know, moving from the character's point of view, having these other elements, you know, cutaways, kind of thing, very beautifully done those scenes. But she couldn't bring in the myth at all, you know. So very early on, I knew I had gotten Beena Paul as a consultant editor, because I knew that it's going to be a challenge. And so she came in, and then we used to have these long sessions. So she came in about, you know, I think we spent a year on the edit, and she would come in at different points. I think 3 or 4 times she came, and would give her thing, and that worked very well, because she, you know, she's not, you know, with the footage all the time. So she'd see stuff and she'd suggest, and she brought in a lot of interesting things. Especially she placed the myth in a very beautiful way, and I think that's her experience with fiction and with knowing, you know, Malayalam, the language, also helped a lot. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think because Tanushri was part of the crew also helped in a way, you know. She was part of our conversations and all that. So, but it was a very, very difficult time. It was not easy. We did a lot of paper edits and, you know, put up stuff, and we went through harrowing times. And of course, we also a lot of conflicting views and fights, and you know how it's so difficult, no, to work with an editor, and especially when you kind of, I mean, you know, as a filmmaker, you've been involved with something for a long time. So yeah, it was, but making the film on the whole was difficult. So it was not an easy job. Yeah.
Okay. Any lasting comments from anyone? Otherwise, I'll say, Sunanda, that was lovely. Thank you so much. I think we went really in depth, which is always wonderful. It's so satisfying to look at a film like this. And do you want to tell us a little bit about your next film, or is it still under wraps?
Yeah, no, it's about, I mean, yeah, it is kind of, it's about a fisherwoman in coastal Karnataka, and lovely, I'm already in love with her, a character.
You've already spent like how much time with her without a camera?
Actually, a year. But before that, I was moving around for a year in that place. I wanted to make another film actually, but that didn't work out. It was too difficult. I mean, not the right, you know, topic. So I found her, and yeah, she's very lovely. So it's on her identity and looking at the politics of the place through her. It's a tough film again, very difficult, but I like her. She's a good person to have in your thing. So I'm seeing how to develop the film, open it up a little more, and I have some ideas which I'm exploring now. I'm just waiting for things to open up before I go there. And again, so here I'm actually not just researching. I'm going to be filming in between, and yeah. So, and it's a very nice the space, the harbor where she buys and sells fish is a beautiful space, very, very lovely. So I actually first liked the space. I said I have to make a film here, and then I found her. So yeah.
And the same cinematographer and sound recorder?
No. This is a different team. Yeah, because they've been quite busy.
Okay.
But, so this is another. He's also from FTI, but very nice. He speaks the language. So Somu also spoke Kannada, but I'm very happy with his stuff too. So yeah, let's see. But it's a challenge, Nilita. It's not. It's not like you make one and then the second one will fall into place. It's so scary. It's very scary.
All the ACJ students who fell in love with documentary, get yourself proper jobs, please. And do this on the side if you must.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, that was lovely, Sunanda. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
thank you so much. I also enjoyed it.
Great. I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.